Hi, this is Linda with the Light Station Express, the relay station. We bring the news to you, and by we, I mean me. Anyway, I'm in the car because, as you can see from the background, I'm at the campground, and Richard's in the camper and he's getting up and getting ready to get his breakfast. It's not going to be quiet in there. So, anyway, I have a frog, of course, right now jumped in my throat. Anyway, um, I had a little something different that I thought I'd try, and we'll see if it's something that sparks any interest or if anybody wants to hear more of what I have here. I have something that I purchased years ago at an auction. Now, I think going to auctions is one of the most fun things ever a person can do. And for a while, I was going to auctions a couple times a week. I just love the sound of the auctioneer. I love to look through the boxes and find treasures. I love to take a little bit of a budget and spread it out as far as possible, as far as spending money or even not spending money. I've gone many times without buying a thing, just listening to the auctioneer, talking to the people, sitting over, just people watching, learning a lot about antiques and different things. I just think it's one of the most enjoyable things to do. Anyway, several years ago, and I mean several, gosh, probably 15 to 20 years ago, I purchased a box of books. And these books were old Reader's Digest. Now I'll have to flip this, I guess, because that's going to be backwards. So I'll flip this before I download it. Anyway, or upload it rather. Anyway, I got this box of Reader's Digest from the 30s and 40s. And let me tell you, some of the articles are so interesting. And, you can see where we've come throughout this nation. I mean, when you talk about this one is 1944, and that's only 20 years away or 19 years away from being 100 years old. So it's kind of, this is treasure. I find these treasure, and I've got probably 25 of them throughout the 30s and 40s, and I might have a couple into the 50s, I'm not sure. But anyway, I found some really interesting articles, and the Reader's Digest has short articles. They're usually taken from a longer article in a different type of magazine or something like that. So they're not really long. Reader's Digests have always been a staple. My mom had them her whole life. I think she read Reader's Digest, and I grew up reading them, and I just love them. But I haven't read a Reader's Digest for a long time. I don't even know if they still make them. But anyway, I have these old ones, and I thought I'd pick out some articles or some short things that I find fascinating in them, and maybe just read them and give you all a little taste of what it was like back then, give myself a little taste. I wasn't born in 44. I was born in 55, but I wasn't born in 44. This is all World War II or pre-World War II, these books that I have. So it's very, I think it's very interesting. So being a person now who is very health conscious and food conscious, I found an article in this one, and this is the Reader's Digest. Look how pretty this one is. They're not all pretty. Like this one has these butterflies, and this is from August 1944, and the back's a little worn. But anyway, I was looking through the titles of the articles, and we have things like we are learning more about pain. I haven't read that one yet. The unions must be regulated. I haven't looked at that one yet. Adventurer of the skies. Thank God the GI can laugh. France without law. How we learn from enemies' weapons. Just kind of things that were period back then. This is 1944. I did find one that I thought I'd read today, and it'll probably take me 15 minutes to read it if you want to, listen that long. And it's called Our Food and Drug G-Men. And because, again, I said I'm consciously aware of the food we're eating, the things that are happening in our world as far as the poisons that have come into, our lives living now in 2025, this is a bit of a time capsule to go back and see where The beginnings of some of these government agencies or whatever came into being. And I did read this, and you can tell, I'm going to say you can tell from the time period that the people that wrote the articles were very, let's see, how can I say it? They made sure they sounded intellectual, but yet they kept that human little piece of it in there. So this is from the Progressive. I guess that was a magazine, and it's on page 17. So let me find this one. Just start it for you. See how far we can go. All right, 17. And it is called Our Food and Drug G-Men. If you can see that or not. And again, I'll flip it because I know that's backwards at the moment. Federal food and drug inspectors are constantly on the prowl to protect you against dangerous products and careless manufacturers. And it gave me, I thought, ooh, let me see what this is about, because we now are very leery of the Food and Drug Administration for passing, certain things that we think they shouldn't, or foods, or we're just I have been very critical of the Food and Drug Administration at this point in 2025 and I guess you would say, what they've grown into since this started. So I thought I'd just read this and see what you guys think. It says, condensed from the Progressive, and it's by Paul W. Kearney, Kearney. All right. When kidnappers or bank robbers or hijackers are on the loose, you know who protects you from them. But when the dangerous hair wave solution comes on the market, badly burning, even killing its users, when the eyebrow dye comes out that blinds the unsuspecting, when a shipment of baby food goes out containing rotten fruit, or an improperly made sulfa drug brings agonized death to 105 innocent victims, who are the G-men who protect you then? I'm sorry, the sun is, darn it, it's changing. I hope you can still see me, but you can hear me, so that's okay. The answer is the hardworking inspectors and scientists of the Food and Drug Administration under Commissioner Walter G. Campbell. Last year, these men inspected over 56,000 samples of foods, drugs, and cosmetics, prosecuted, enjoined, or confiscated the products of more than 3,000 distributors of adulterated or dangerous foods. In any normal month, they'll seize more than 100 shipments of contaminated or filthy food, turning the cases over to the Department of Justice for prosecution if need be. On cereal products alone, in the fiscal year 1942 to 1943, there were 560 court actions. These food and drug men turned their attention with equal facility to huge corporations or humble housewives making pin money out of home baking, PIN, P-I-N. Just before Christmas last year, a doctor came into the Washington headquarters with a piece of fruitcake, the gift of a grateful patient. It had made his wife and 2 visitors deathly ill. Analysis showed the presence of arsenic, and in a jiffy, the inspectors were off for the woman's house. Yes, she had baked that cake and 5 others, which she had sold to neighbors. Hurry calls rounded up 4 of the cakes untouched, but the 5th had been bought by the lady who came around selling vanilla extract. So another lady bought this cake, and she was selling vanilla extract. Let's see. But the label on the bottle of vanilla extract gave the manufacturer's name and address out in the Middle West. A long-distance call ascertained that only the local agent who had recruited the Washington saleswoman would know their names, and he was on his way to Oklahoma for the holidays. So inspectors had to make a patient door-to-door canvass until they found a customer who recalled hearing the still nameless canvasser say that she had a brother in Bailey's Crossroads, Virginia. In Bailey's Crossroads, they went from door to door until they found a man whose sister sold vanilla extract, but his sister had gone away for the holidays. And the fruitcake? Oh, yes. She had sent that to a nephew in Canada. And There were, it seemed, three nephews up there, but he didn't know where any of them lived. In the aunt's personal effects, the inspectors found letters from three different Canadian addresses, and at one of them, Canadian officials found the fruitcake still intact. Meanwhile, other inspectors questioned the family of the woman who had baked the cakes. All swore there had never been any arsenic in the house, but when the flour in the kitchen was tested, it fairly reeked with arsenic. They checked with the dealer who had supplied the flour to the woman, and then with the jobber. All their flour was okay. Perplexed, the inspectors returned and fine-combed the house. So they're in this lady's house, I guess, looking through things without result until one, rummaging through the rubbish in the yard, found an empty paper bag with the remains of a powder which contained arsenic. It was an aerosol insect spray bought in bulk at the local druggists who hadn't been in the garden, what hadn't been used in the garden presumably had been dumped by one of the children into the flour crock. Thanks to the quick, painstaking labor of these G-men of the pantry, a dozen lives were saved. Perhaps the most stupendous feat of the Bureau was in connection with. Okay, this is another whole story. So I'm going to stop there because that one was just. I had to stop and think about it a minute. So the initial creation, I guess you would say, of the G-Men, the Food and Drug Administration, from did I say department? What department? Food and Drug Administration under the Commissioner, Walter Campbell. Anyway, this is 1944. So this is kind of in the beginnings of that. And when we hear that they are here to keep us safe, I think this is the kind of story that with the original inception of this government area, this government agency, when it was first, brought about, there were good intentions. Now, if we look at the Department of Food and Drug Administration, we might be a little more skeptical. We might be a little more, oh, that's part of the government, but it seems that in the very beginning, there were some things that they did help with, and most of it was things that were not regulated. And I know that's a fine line to walk, because when we make something in our kitchen, or we make something and share it with others, and you consume something that someone made, even at a bake sale or something, you are taking a risk. I mean, you don't know if the cat, like we see that picture of the cat with its tail on the baking sheet in somebody's house, and they're making the cake to take over to the church picnic, or something. I mean, we do take a risk when we think about eating food that's prepared in someone's house, or eating food that's hasn't been regulated. So I think there is value and worth to common sense thinking, about what we put in our bodies. But now, it's a whole different story today when we talk about the Food and Drug Administration. And there are several other stories in here. Let's see. Let's see if I can find something. You think that the Bureau, let's see, in a single city, inspectors found that 49 prescriptions had been filled from one shipment. Oh, they're talking about a shipment that came here, and it was tainted. It was either, I think it was rotten or something. But anyway, they were making things out of it. And anyway, people were getting sick, and they were taken care of, making sure people didn't get sick, and continually, doing that stuff. So let's see. The lengths to which some food people go in fighting seizures of their property, are amazing. Once a shipment of fig paste had been condemned because it was full of maggots. The owner went to court and lost. Then his attorney said to the judge, "We believe that under the law, this fig paste can be sold for non-food use." How familiar does that sound now, right? Chewing tobacco manufacturers use considerable of this paste. And since chewing tobacco is not defined as a food, we request permission to dispose of this shipment to this trade. The judge eyed him coldly for a long moment, spat a lusty gob of tobacco juice in his cuspidor, and said, "Motion denied." So I'm not going to read anymore, but that's just an example of some of the articles that I can find in these old Reader's Digest. So I think I'll stop that one for there. That was 15 minutes, and it was kind of funny, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, now I understand why this got started. And of course the government steps where they shouldn't. Of course the government oversteps, and they will have these stories from the past that they can use because, hey, look, maybe we saved this person from dying, or their children got sick, or something was tainted, or something was rotten, or something had maggots in it, and you wouldn't know. And we've seen these videos where they slop together the stuff like the pink slime for the chicken nuggets and that kind of thing. And that's where it still is. But I just thought it was interesting. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through these, and we're moving back to our apartment. So I'm moving things out of storage, and I found my box of Reader's Digest. And one time I did try to sell them, and there wasn't really an interest, but I think they're gold because they talk about a time in recent, if you would say it, American history, back in those old 1900s, when some of these things were just coming to be. The stories about the World War II are really interesting in the ones that are done in the 40s. The ones that I have in the 30s, they're pre-World War II, so they have a little more different slant on some of their articles. And some of the wording is we wouldn't say those things today because it would offend someone. So some of the wording in some of the articles that back then seemed to be okay, nowadays would not be okay, and for good reason. But I just thought that would be a fun thing. Maybe if I pull out a couple different things that seem to be kind of up to date, even though it's such an old article, but even up to date because we're looking at the Food and Drug Administration now. We're looking at the things that, what happened in 2020 and some of the other things that we feel like we're so overpowered by the government now. We have no choices. But I just found this one article pretty interesting in that area of study. So anyway, I'm going to look through some more of these, and if anybody wants to listen, I'll just put Reader's Digest in the title. Maybe I'll make a little playlist of just some of these articles. And they have the little funny things in here, the little topics. I can't remember what they're all called. But anyway, the Reader's Digest is kind of rich, with some of this American, I guess we could call it history now. I've lived long enough to live through some American history, so it's kind of interesting. Well, I guess that's all I'll do today. I hope that was fun. And like I said, I'll look for some more things. So this is Linda with the Life Station Express, the relay station. That was the news we brought today. And it's really in a news thing. It's newsprint. It is really newsprint paper. So, it's kind of interesting. I think it's just fun. So I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. I hope you really enjoyed that. This is Linda. Bye-bye.